Tak ti odovzdávame slovo.
Good morning. I hope I'm speaking to the audience. Good morning, my name is Peter Robel and I work for Knauf Insulation here in Slovakia and serve as board member of the Slovak Green Building Council. And I want to welcome you to the webinar that is prepared together in a cooperation of the Slovak and the Czech Green Building Councils. And it's a webinar in which we will be talking about levels, about a new sustainability language or reporting and assessment framework introduced by the European Commission in the autumn of last year. This is for green building councils and everyone who deals with sustainability in architecture, construction in any country is a big deal. It's a new topic. It's a new tool that will be very important for the European Green Deal, for the renovation wave, and for the circular economy action plan. And so we decided together with our Czech colleagues to prepare this webinar and bring the topic to our countries to introduce it and open the public discussion about how we can leverage the levels for better sustainability in construction in our countries. And with that, I want to give the floor to my colleague Simona Kalvoda, the Executive Director of the Czech Green Building Council, for a few words on how they see the topic.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Peter. We really welcome the initiative by the EU to bring the levels around, because it's another instrument how to support and promote the sustainability and quality buildings. I would also like to thank the Slovak Green Building Council for initiating this event and for organizing it. And I hope that this is the first one in this year, and that we will see quite a few joint events during the year. The topics that we currently focus on are, of course, the decarbonization, digitalization, financing of sustainable buildings, post-COVID development as well, because we believe that the whole COVID pandemic will accelerate the sustainable buildings, and overall the transition to sustainability. So watch our website for more events, and I'm sure that we will be coming back to you with invitations on more joint events. And I wish you a very constructive and informative morning.
Thank you, Simona. Thank you. And just to build on it, the aim of the webinar is really to introduce the concept of levels to the broad audience in Czech Republic and Slovakia. And I have the pleasure to welcome our speakers who will help us introduce the topic to you. And that is in the order of the agenda, Josefina Lindblom from the DG Environment from the European Commission, who is behind the entire Levels project and will be speaking about it in the first instance. And then we will have contributions from Judith Kimpian, who works for Architects Council of Europe and who has paid visits to Slovakia a few years ago. And then I have the pleasure to welcome my colleague, Jean-Pierre Pijolet from Knauf Insulation, who has been engaged in a testing pilot project where in a real construction levels have been applied to and tested. And last but not least, I have the pleasure to welcome Andrea Moro, who works for the International Initiative for Sustainable Built Environment in Italy. Welcome, Andrea, and welcome everyone. Okay, before we proceed to presentations, a few technical instructions about this webinar. First of all, the webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be provided to you via a link together with the presentations of the speakers after the event. So please be aware that we are being recorded. Second, you're most welcome, because that's the aim of the webinar, to ask questions to speakers. You can do that during the presentations or later during the Q&A session. Please use the Q&A icon to type your questions, and we will be then responding to the questions in the second part of the seminar. If you have any technical issues, you can use the chat icon. You can use the chat to report the issues if you think we have problem with audio or video or whatever. Please let us know. And a kind request is that after the seminar, after the webinar, you will receive a link or an option to fill in a brief survey on how and what you liked, to give us the feedback. So please use that opportunity to help us make this better the next time around. So that's for the introduction, and now I will be introducing Josefina with her presentation. As I said before, Josefina works for DG Environment as Policy Officer responsible for the work on sustainable buildings since 2011, and has, among other things, managed the recent collaborative development of levels. So she is the right person to introduce all of us to the idea and to the use of levels, intended to use of and in the uni buildings since 2011, and has among to introduce
Thank
all
you,
of us to the
Peter. I'm
idea
going to
and
share
the
my
use
screen
of
with
levels,
all of
intended
you.
to use of levels. So
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
we can hear you and we see your screen. Thank you.
Very good, very good. So I should be at the first. Yeah. So there you got a quick snapshot of my slides. Anyway, I'm here today, of course, to talk about levels, which is this new European framework for sustainable buildings, as Peter just said. So first of all, before explaining what levels is, I would really like to say something about why we have developed levels. Now, buildings or the built environment, it is responsible for lots of use of different kinds of resources. So half of all our
Josefina, Jean-Pierre speaking. You are not on the first slide. I guess there is an issue because you are on the slide 10 of your presentation.
Oh dear. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Thank you for flagging. So you
yes,
don't
no,
see
it's okay. It's okay now, Josefina. Perfect.
Okay. So you don't see what I see. That's mysterious, but okay. Thank you very much for flagging. So yeah, I will talk about levels, and it is the European Framework for Sustainable Buildings that indeed we published last autumn, well, this last autumn in October. So now I hope that you see something which says Y levels on top. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Not yet.
Okay.
It's just the first slide, levels.
Okay, I think there is a bit of a lag in how this works, but I hope it's going to come. What I am going to talk about then is I want first to show you how much of our resource use is being linked to buildings, the construction and use and renovation of buildings. So now, do you see something which says Y levels on top?
No,
not
we
yet,
don't.
Josefina. I think no.
Go ahead,
Oh dear.
Jean-Pierre.
We see the cover slide, the first.
Yeah, but that's not good enough. I want you to see.
Okay, now yes.
So like that then?
Yeah, we got it now. It's okay.
Okay, so I have to do each slide manually then. Okay, I will do that. So half of all our extracted materials is linked to buildings, half of our total energy consumption, a third of our water consumption, and a third of our waste, total waste, which is generated, is construction and demolition waste. So those are, of course, enormous quantities of different kinds of resources being used and being shuffled around, you could say, when it comes to the built environment. And with levels, we want to provide a holistic framework to increase this performance of buildings and bring them firmly into the circular economy. So the idea here is really to enable building professionals and their clients, of course, the demand side, to use less resources and through that improve environmental performance. And levels can be used as really as an entry-level tool. Of course, many of you may be aware of and maybe even used to working with different kinds of certification schemes. Levels is not a certification scheme. It is an entry-level tool, and at each stage and in the building process, you can work with it to get a complete picture. So let's see, I probably need to get out then and manually click my way forward.
We now see your next slide, yes.
What is levels you see now, yeah?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay, good, so there we go. So what is levels then, now when I have explained a bit why we started to work on this? What levels is, as I said, an EU-wide framework to assess and report on the sustainability performance of buildings. It is not a certification scheme. You don't have to certify your building to use levels. We want to provide a set of indicators and with them the methodology behind them on how to really look at your building throughout the full life cycle. It is applicable to individual buildings as well as to a larger set of buildings. It takes a whole life cycle approach. So in that sense, it provides a robust approach to both measurement, assessment, and then improvement, of course, from the design to end of life. We have developed levels thinking primarily about residential buildings and offices. And we have, of course, done it for new buildings, but also for major renovation projects. That's important to know. And these core indicators, which I will show you a little bit later, they have already been tested throughout Europe. We included a test phase. As you can see, if you look at on the right-hand side, there you see that we started to work already back in 2015. And we set up a large number of big stakeholder groups who helped us greatly in developing and steering our work with levels. And then we published a beta version in 2017, and then followed 2 years of testing, which was very useful for us and a great support in being sure that we were on the right way. And we did some major changes to the presentation of levels in 2019, 2020, when we had the results of the test phase, the feedback, let's say, to steer us, to guide us right. And then, as I said, in October last year, we published it, or we launched levels. And we are currently working on different kinds of web-based material to work with levels and to train how to work with levels as well. And it is open source and freely available. Do you now see a different screen?
No.
No? Okay, yeah, I really need to go out each time and change it for some reason. Okay, so I'll continue to do so. So now you should have a pie chart in front of you, which shows what areas levels actually cover.
Yes, we have that.
Yeah, as I mentioned, a big emphasis in the levels framework with its indicators is dedicated, or there's a big emphasis to the resource use. So that's energy, material, and water. And we look at this through the life cycle. But we also have an area which is linked to the health and comfort and resilience to climate change. And then lastly, also a part on life cycle cost, value, and risk. And if I show you the actual indicators, what they look like, you see it here. Here you see a matrix with the different indicators. And again, you see to the very left, you see the 3 thematic areas, which I just show you in the pie chart. Yeah, the resource use, health and comfort, and then the cost, value, and risk. we started working with levels thinking that there were a specific set of macro objectives that we wanted to target. And those are the 6 macro objectives which come in the following column there. So when it comes to resource use, as I said, we're looking at greenhouse gas emissions, well, the energy and its link to greenhouse gas emissions. We look at resource and efficient circular material use and their life cycles. We look at water as well. And if you go another step to the right, you see the actual indicators for those macro objectives. So I don't intend to go through them one by one here, but here you see that we're talking about 15, 16 indicators all in all, because we have those also for health and comfort and cost, value, and risk. So yeah, you see the structure of levels, let's say, and what it intends to cover. So this is where we are. This is the one that we're rolling out now. This is the framework. So for example, you can see energy use, energy consumption in the use phase, but also the life cycle, global warming potential. And linked to that, of course, you have for resources, you have bill of quantities, bill of materials, and the lifespan. You have waste, design for adaptability and deconstruction. This is all very much linked to the life cycle global warming potential, of course. You have water, you have indoor air quality and time out of thermal comfort range, etc., etc. So this is what we are proposing. Right, and then I wanted to show you why do we call it levels actually? Well, there are many reasons, but one good level is that we are actually proposing to use these or to work with these indicators at 3 different levels, 3 different stages, 3 different levels of the building project. So the first level where you can use those indicators is that you use them in a qualitative way at the concept stage, in particular to help to focus the conversation on what the objectives should be of this building when it comes to sustainability in particular, between the design team and the developer and the investor or the client. So here you have a tool that can help you to focus those conversations. The level 2, the second level, is that you use same indicators, but actually at the design and construction stage, and then you do it in a quantitative way. And the last level is that you take a fresh look at your indicators and how they actually performed once you have the building ready at the handover to the client, and then you can see how does it really perform, and then hopefully we encourage a sort of a feedback loop to see what is there a difference between the design performance and the actual performance, and what lessons can be learned from that, and how can that be minimized, that gap, if there is a gap. So where does levels then sit in the policy context? Well, we have the Paris Agreement, and we have the Sustainable Development Goals, which many of them link directly or indirectly to the built environment. So we find it a very important area to be working in. When it comes to the actual EU policy context, we have, as many of you know, the Green Deal, which was published in December 2019, which sets out a number of different actions and initiatives from the Commission side. And it also talks about the built environment and how it should be energy and resource efficient. The Green Deal is sort of an overall umbrella framework. And under that, then last year in 2020, we saw, for example, the Circular Economy Action Plan, the new one, which came out, and the Renovation Wave. They both talk very much about buildings and also about the circularity aspect and life cycle and so on. The Renovation Wave also introduced Bauhaus, which some of you may have come across, the new European Bauhaus, which is a new initiative to try to set together a vision together with citizens, what our built environment should look like in the future. But we also have the recovery plans, the recovery and resilience plans, as they are called, which link then to the post-COVID. How do we get out of the COVID crisis, and how should we build our societies stronger and greener in the future? So buildings is very much linked to all of these initiatives. What are the key benefits as we see with the levels? And in particular, this is what I have picked up also in my discussions with different stakeholders, building professionals and member states and so on. What are the key ones? It's quite a long list, huh? So we believe that it is a very good one. As I said, it is a holistic and common language. We really want to see it as, it is not a certification scheme, but it provides a common language so that you can use it for different kinds of initiatives. You can use it even if you're not intending to certify your building at all. We are really targeting to this kind of scheme, this kind of framework to the mainstream market. It should be possible for most kinds of building projects to look at these indicators, be inspired, and learn and understand how they can assess different kinds of choices that they are contemplating, and learn what could be the best, and move ahead and raise their skills in this area. So it is based on existing best practice industry standards. I want to clarify that. We see lots of existing standards being used in the different, or for the different indicators. We have a methodology that can be used across major asset types and geographies as well. As I said, this has been tested in the test phase. We believe that looking at the full life cycle is necessary to future-proof buildings, also for carbon neutrality. We must look at the whole life carbon. This becomes more and more important. We also see how this framework levels can underpin future both EU and national policies. We already see it having an impact in different national policy initiatives, and as well as we go along ourselves within the European Commission, when we are now preparing, for example, sustainable finance, energy performance of buildings directive, etc. We see an opening mind to the life cycle thinking. We also see how actual certification schemes start to align themselves with levels. So they look at levels and they look at the core indicators, and they see, if we want to be well positioned vis-a-vis EU policy, we ought to link ourselves to these indicators. We believe that it is a really good tool to enhance the dialogue between different kinds of stakeholders, and to support the skills in organizations related to sustainability. What I often hear is that you saw the matrix of indicators, and you may think that they look many, there are 15, 16, depending on how you count them, but we really think that it brings a minimum numbers of indicators, but with maximum leverage to deliver sustainability. It tracks performance throughout the full life cycle. I showed you the 3 different levels at which you can use these kinds of indicators, and it brings accountability and investor confidence. And supports communication of these kinds of things as well. So levels is for you, whether you are working in planning, in design, if you're working in the finance business, or in execution. We have been having great collaborative process throughout these last couple of years, and all these kinds of professionals have been involved heavily in our work. Having said that, I would also like to say something about what's next for levels. So this is not a scientific timeline, but I wanted to pinpoint some things which are happening in particular in 2021, but you see there are a few things also for later on. You may have heard of the EU initiative on sustainable finance. This should be adopted in spring, where it is all about tackling climate change. There will be a delegated act here, and levels with its indicator on the whole life carbon, so the global warming potential indicator throughout the full life cycle, or with the full life cycle, is being referred to there as well. So we have managed to bring the life cycle thinking into that initiative. We of course have, under the new Horizon Europe, that is the new research framework of the European Commission, we have now a new public-private partnership which is about to kick off, and there we also take a strong holistic life cycle approach, where levels will play an important role. We have, as I also mentioned, the recovery and resilience plans, which all member states are busy preparing and finalizing now. And we believe that levels can play an important role in the implementation of those plans as well. We have different revisions of directives ongoing this year, which are linked to energy performance, in particular the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, where we are looking together with different services in the European Commission, how we can start to include the thinking of life cycle as well. And then we have two initiatives which should be ready by 2023, so a bit more long term, although quite close anyway. We will look at the green public procurement criteria that the Commission has already for offices, and we will revise those so that we can base it firmly on levels and get a true circularity approach to those. So we will revise those. We will also include not just office buildings, but also social housing and schools is the plan. And then a very exciting initiative, which is actually an action under the so-called renovation wave, is that the Commission will develop a roadmap for whole life carbon reduction in the building sector by 2023. And although this is just a part of levels, we think that levels can provide an important role in this work as well. And then I jumped the green one there, if you see it, because that is more of it's not a policy initiative, it's a support tool, which we are developing during this year. So we are developing actually two web-based support tools, I should say, to work with levels, to use it on your building project, but also to train yourself in how to do it. So those things should be ready by the end of this year as well. So there are lots of things happening, as you can see. The last slide I'm going to show you really relates to this initiative on the top right here, the roadmap for whole life carbon reduction, which I wanted to share with you. I think it's a very exciting initiative, and I just wanted to say a few words on that as well. So this is an action which we will be doing together with a number of other parts of the Commission as well, and it should be ready in 2023. And we believe it's very important to look at the whole life carbon. We just heard in the introduction, before I started to talk about the goal of decarbonization, etc. And that is clearly something that we want to support, but we want to look at the full life cycle. So beyond the use phase of the building, but the full life cycle. We see that this is becoming more and more important. The importance of whole life emissions are increasing, especially as our buildings during their use phase, new buildings during use phase are becoming more and more efficient. We are using typically more and more materials to make them more efficient, but it costs carbon to produce those materials, right? So we want to make sure that we take a balanced approach here. We believe that if we set out a roadmap, we can provide a vision for policymakers at different levels, but also for building professionals and investors and others, so that we see where we're heading. And we want to include milestones, whether that is 2025, 30, 35, perhaps. We want to set out how we can go step by step and link this also to other policy initiatives so that we can reach our carbon neutral objectives by 2050. That's really the idea. We believe a roadmap can function as an accelerator. It shows direction, of course, and it can motivate actions also ahead of the different milestones, let's say. We see that if we look at some of the front runners, some member states which are already working in this direction. So we want to be inspired by those front runners as well. And then, of course, we think, a great opportunity. We have the green and digital transition, which many are talking about, and we believe this can really create an opportunity for such a thing as a roadmap, so that can work hand in hand and support each other. All right, just to tell you that, well, first of all, thanking you for having listened, but also to say that you're very welcome to visit our webpage, where you can learn much more. You can see the actual levels documents, of course, but you can also see more communication material and some videos, etc. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and you can, of course, join the very new Levels group on LinkedIn if you wish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Josefina. Thank you for the introduction. And I already have a few questions that I'm sure will pop up in the discussion, but perhaps many of them will be addressed by our next speakers, because the questions are linked to how the levels can be used, how that works in real life. And exactly that is the topic for Jean-Pierre Pijolet, who is my colleague at Knauf Insulation. He works there as product and buildings sustainability manager. He has been engaged with the construction of our Knauf Insulation Experience Center in Slovenia, where the levels have been tested as one of the 130 pilot projects. But he also is engaged with developing our EPDs and automating the process and LCA analysis of the mineral wool that we are producing. So he is the right person then to speak about the experience with using the levels in constructing the experience center in Slovenia. Jean-Pierre, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. So thank you, Peter. So I'm going to put my screen in presentation mode. I hope it will work. So do you see my full screen, Peter?
Yes, we see your full screen. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So good morning again. So I'm very happy to get this opportunity to present you the pilot project that we have introduced during the testing phase of levels. So that was end 2018 and 2019, first part. So do you see my next slide, Peter, just to check?
Yes, we do. Yes,
Peter, could you confirm you see the second one?
Yes, we do see that.
Okay, perfect then. I can continue. So this pilot project was located in Slovenia, Škofja Loka, so in the middle of the beautiful mountains of Slovenia. So you see the plant that we have there. So we are producing insulation products. So this is a stone wool plant. And we had this objective to construct a demonstration and experience center on the parking lot of the plant. And this building is now used for experience and demonstration, and also for social events. So the neighborhood people can use the building also for some social events. And so in this building, we have at the first floor, we have some conference rooms that are quite flexible because we can just split the room. We have removable walls. And on the ground level, we have what we call the demonstration center, so the customer can play with insulation and just to know about the new techniques about insulation systems. So when we decided to construct this building, we really wanted that this building should be a kind of piece of the art in terms of sustainability, and then how to be sure that we can encompass all the sustainability issues, all the sustainability topics, like thermal comfort, like health issues, like acoustic, like fire prevention, like also life cycle costing of the building, also to think about the demolition or deconstruction of the building at the end of life. So how can we be sure that the materials that we have used into the building can be easily segregated and used again at the end of life of the building in 50 years, for example. So there was a need for a kind of scheme, a kind of tool that can help us to navigate through the system, the sustainability requirements. So to be sure that we don't forget any issue that is fundamental in terms of sustainability. So we started to think about it at the design phase, and we wanted to be sure that at the design, during the construction and post-construction, all the sustainability aspects have been taken into account. So we were asking ourselves that question. And so we decided that time to go for the DGNB certification in order to certify the building through this scheme. So DGNB certification is something that has been set up by the German Green Building Council. This is their scheme. And then you have to go through all the sustainability aspects, sustainability topics, and you receive a score for each topic. And then at the end, you receive a global score. So we receive 80% for this building. So this is a platinum building. So excellent building in terms of sustainability. And when we decided also to go for this certification, at the same time, we saw that there was this call for the pilot testing phase, so for pilot project, call for pilot projects from the EU Commission. So that was end of 2018. And so we decided to apply also for levels, and to compare at the end what was requested in DGNB and what was requested in levels. And so we decided to go for it, and I was part of the team dealing with this project. We got quite a lot of contact with the DGNB people, so they help us to understand what were really the differences between DGNB and levels, what were the criteria in levels at that time. And so we did a workshop where we analyzed the requirement and criteria from both tools, and we highlighted the similarities and differences between the two tools. So that's why you see some red box, some green ones, some yellow one where we still had questions that time. And so as an example, for example, we compared the life cycle assessment of the building. So in DGNB, that was 50 years that we taken into account. And in levels, you have to take into account 60 years, for example. So since then it has been reviewed, I think, to be more compatible. And we had also some questions about carbon footprint of the building in order, for example, to split the fossil origin of the carbon and the biogenic carbon in the building that is coming from wood infrastructure, for example. So that was something requested in levels, but not in the DGNB, for example. And so we got a lot of questions, a lot of similarities also, so that was a good surprise. And so that was an interesting exercise that we did with help of the DGNB. And so that time, the criteria and the way levels was structured was a little bit different. So levels has been updated after this pilot phase. And so now the new guidelines have been published beginning of this year with new explanation about the criteria also. And now it's even more simple than before. So it's easier to use. But during the pilot phase, we received an Excel file that was quite complicated to fill in with different stages about the construction and also different level of details of information to provide. So 3 years ago, let's say, level means level of information to provide, but now level means level 1 concept of the building, level 2 design, and level 3 the reality, the post-construction. So it's really different in comparison with what you have on the screen. So it's just to give some information about the pilot phase. And when we implement this this comparison, so we discovered that a lot of tools from the DGNB were really in compliance with levels requirements. So for example, the tool about design for deconstruction, tool for adaptability of the building, tool for life cycle costing, post-air measurements also. So a lot of what was requested into the DGNB was in compliance with what requested in levels also. And so that brings us to the conclusion that we got very high similarities between this certification scheme, DGNB, and the levels tool. So again, levels is not a certification scheme, so you don't receive any point into levels. So it's a tool to guide you, but it's not a certification scheme. And so, as I said, a lot of the DGNB tools were really helpful to comply with levels requirements. Then when we finalized this pilot phase, so we had to submit the Excel file I was talking about to the EU Commission, to the Joint Research Center from the EU Commission, and they analyzed all the Excel files that were coming from the 82 testers that finalized the levels pilot phase. Then with all those comments and results, they updated levels through the new version, so levels version 1 that has been published in January 2021. In order to communicate also about the results that we get after this pilot phase, we organize a conference also in this Knopf Insulation Experience Center in Slovenia in September 2019. And during that conference, we invited the people from the Slovenian government, because something I forgot maybe to mention is that we involved directly the Slovenian authorities, because we selected the DGNB as the rating system for our building, because in Slovenia you don't have a national rating system existing. And so the Slovenian government was really interested to capitalize on levels and on the results of our projects in order to develop a rating system also for Slovenia that is based on levels. And so this is now what they are working with, and they are really now trying to implement into the green public purchasing requirements in Slovenia this levels tool. And Sasha Galonia, so the head of construction division and spatial planning, was really involved into this project, and really happy to participate. So some lessons and challenges of this project. So if you experience a rating system like LEED, DGNB, BREEAM, HQE in France, you can very easily understand this kind of tool like levels, because a lot of criteria are really similar. On the other side, if you don't experience this before, this kind of rating system, it can be a challenge for you, because there are a lot of criteria. But I'm sure that now this is what we are doing today. So we are spreading the knowledge and the awareness across all stakeholders in order that everybody can use it. And when you apply levels, it's not mandatory to apply all criteria. So it's like a wish list, and then you can apply a little bit whatever you want. So it's up to the countries, the government, to decide what they will implement from levels. Levels is an holistic approach, and this is very nice. So this is something that Josephine also mentioned. This is the whole life cycle assessment of the building, and it will also increase the knowledge of the European norms, like the norms about building life cycle assessment, product life cycle assessment, and so on, because every criteria is always linked to a European norm. This is very important in levels to get a very detailed bill of materials, because the bill of materials, so all the materials you are using to construct your building, this is really the structure, the baseline, let's say, of the life cycle assessment, of the life cycle costing, of the deconstruction of your building. So if you don't have a good bill of materials at the beginning of the project, you have difficulties afterwards. We got some difficulties in levels to analyze two criteria. So the one about values, risks, factors, criteria. So the value creation of the building, that was challenging, but now it has been simplified with the new version. So I was happy to see the new version of the criteria that is more, that it has been simplified and is more simple to understand. And we got some challenge also to apply the resilience to climate change criteria, because it's difficult to assess what will be the future in terms of climate and so on, and that was quite complicated. But there is a new norm that is coming on, and that will help to understand how we have to adapt the building for the future. And when we started also the pilot phase, acoustic and fire safety criteria were not part of levels. So now there is an acoustic criteria that has been developed that is really well done. And just one is still missing, is the fire safety criteria. So I did not see anything about that into levels, unfortunately. Then it's more for the panel discussion, maybe at the end of the presentation. But what will be the future of levels? So now all the government and all the private organizations also will use levels. So is it going to be a kind of a tool for construction permit authorization? For example, for big project, if you don't apply levels, we don't give you your permit for construction. Is it going to be a support for green public procurement or a tool for financial incentives also for subsidies? So if you don't apply levels, for example, you cannot get some subsidies from the government for green energy, for insulation or things like that. So it's a little bit open to all governments and private organizations. And then about levels in the related to the building rating system that are existing today. So is it going to be the core of the rating system? I think it's going to be a little bit like that because there was a call for proposals. So this LIFE framework. So the EU Commission requested some projects about levels in order to better understand levels. And 8 Green Building Council in Europe, so the one from France, Spain, the Dutch Green Building Council, Germany, so DGNB and so on, they join forces in order to better understand levels and to be more in line with levels. And into this Life Levels project that will spend during 3 years, they will focus on life cycle assessment, life cycle costing, and indoor air quality in order to apply the same metrics for those 3 criteria, because this is something very important into levels. They want that everybody in Europe use the same metrics for the criteria in order to compare buildings. So this is really the objective of levels, to get good benchmark and to have the possibility to compare the buildings. So this is my last slide. So I guess you all know about the Energy Performance Building Directive that is applied today in Europe, where you have several levels of energy efficiency of the building. So I'm really confident that in the future, levels will help also to go in the direction of a sustainable performance building directive. That means that next to energy efficiency, we have also to think about the health of the occupant, the comfort, the end of life of the building in terms of deconstruction and the reuse of the materials, and also the whole carbon footprint of the building. So this is the end of my presentation, and I will be happy to answer your questions after the presentations.
Thank you, Jean-Pierre. And yes, indeed, I'm sure there will be many questions. Some questions are already popping up, and I want to encourage our audience to type the questions as they listen to presentations. It will be much easier than to structure the discussion after we finish. And building up on what you said, Jean-Pierre, is that here in Czech Republic and Slovakia, we see a number of non-residential commercial buildings being certified and built along the criteria of sustainability. But what we don't see as much is residential buildings built along sustainability criteria, not to speak about major renovations. So there is a gap between what we need the buildings to be and what they are. And this is actually the topic of our next speaker, Judith Kimpian, who works for the Architects Council of Europe as the chair of sustainability, and will be speaking about her experience campaigning to reform the EU legislation to deliver a net zero built environment. Judith, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. As you said, I chair the Architects Council of Europe's Environmental and Sustainable Architecture work group. I also teach planning for net zero at University College London. Well, what do we need to report on to achieve this rapid transformation of our built environment towards net zero? And why do we need all of this data? And this is a pertinent discussion at the Architects Council, and we work very closely with other global organizations, European NGOs, the various EU ministries, and we represent about 43 member organizations in 31 countries, some of them not EU members, and over 600,000 architects. And you can imagine that talking about data and reporting is often a heated discussion about amongst architects. Josefina had talked extensively about the various EU policies and the potential role of levels in that. And one of the key concerns for architects is that we read that with this huge amount of effort and investment going into the transformation of the built environment, we really introduce a much greater level of accountability into the process. And we don't live in the same world anymore. Even a year ago, since last year, we have many more climate emergency declarations around Europe and also within the UK. Over 500 local authorities in the UK, over 350 local authorities, 12 EU countries have declared climate emergencies. There are legal targets for Europe and also in neighboring countries. There are toolkits for policy makers on what this emergency means. And the reason why we are facing this emergency is actually, when you look at energy use reduction since the 1990s, the graph really speaks for itself. We have not managed to curb even our energy consumption, and in terms of our material use and broader environmental impact, we are edging closer and closer to irreversible damage. As I said, we're really not in the same place. There's a realization that we need leaps and not piecemeal action. Professional organizations are taking a leading role now. Architects themselves are recognizing their huge influence and have led many leading initiatives, some of which have become influential cross-industry movements. And all of them want to see real, tangible, measurable change that we can work with. The COVID-19 pandemic has given a massive adrenaline injection to the climate movement, really strengthening calls for a much greater emphasis on green public realm and highlighting the need to transform city centers into healthier, greener neighborhoods. The green urban grids are seen as arteries for safer, healthier transport and urban renewal. And remote working has brought into very sharp focus the inequality in the spatial and architectural quality of homes and buildings and the impact of that on health and well-being. COVID has also exposed the fragility of certain building types and the resilience of others. For example, buildings that have stood the test of these difficult times have been those that offered operable facades, greater adaptability between home, office, and retail functions. For example, taller floor-to-ceiling heights, narrower floor plates, greater mass, really challenging the prevailing investment models that predominantly favor a shorter lifespan typology. So whether existing or new, the importance of high quality architecture and public realm has been championed by the German Baukultur Foundation. Its influence has grown so much that Ursula von der Leyen has put the new European Bauhaus at the heart of the EU Green Deal and the Green Recovery Fund, each totaling over 1 trillion euros, i.e. each. And this is an example of a building in Denmark where you can see the convergence of a cultural value and a performative aspect of the built environment. In this case, also bringing life cycles costs down by 80%. So, as we are increasingly counting for these long-term aspects of performance, we no longer count energy only. And to support a more holistic decision-making, we are really taking into account the environmental impact of all the natural resources used and scrutinize what it is that we achieve with them, at least in the terms of comfort and well-being, climate change resilience, and capital and whole life cost value. And this is the framework that Levels really captures so well, and why the Architects Council has seized this framework as such a valuable asset. And we want to do this over a building's lifespan. So we really want to stop pushing impacts further along a building's life. We want to make sure that we account for these impacts over the entire lifespan. So from product to construction to use, end of life. And Levels is really the first EU reporting framework that looks at building performance from this holistic perspective. We think that it is a game-changing program that, in our view, should really underpin all policy incentives relating to the sustainable built environment. We really need such a framework so that we stop pushing these impacts downstream, and also to enable designers to better balance these multiple and, frankly, often conflicting factors. So, for example, architects are never in favor of doing more accounting, but actually we're not alien to scheduling. We do like to schedule things that really make sense to do so. But in this case, what we have not been able to do in the past is, for example, balance these different conflicting drivers through design. For example, to give you an example, lower floor-to-floor heights help reduce heating loads due to a more compact form. They also reduce embodied carbon, but they increase overheating risk, and higher ceilings increase the perception of available space. There's also a multitude of such considerations that designers face day in, day out. And making them more explicit means that the pros and cons can be meaningfully evaluated for a specific project. What's even more important about Levels is that it recognizes the importance of accountability through data by allowing comparisons of expectations and outcomes. So this is a new feature of Levels that has not so far featured in EU legislation. We have a tradition to compare theoretical performance and not really make it harmonized, not make it comparable with on the road performance, as we know well from the car industry. And yeah, to make real-term improvements, we have to start measuring real-life performance and not just in the lab figures. As we have come to recognize terms like efficacy versus effectiveness, emission standards versus edge-driven emissions, these can hide very important differences in assumptions. So by targeting real performance, we can begin to align the fragmented supply chain in the construction sector. And these interests have to then work together towards shared goals and stop value engineering aspects of design that undermine whole life performance. In fact, after operational carbon, the lifespan of elements is the biggest factor in achieving net zero goals. So take a look at in this chart. So in over 100-year lifespan, a building that has a 15-year lifespan, which is not uncommon in major cities, has to be replaced over 6 times. So lifespan is also a major driver for architectural quality. Aiming for a longer lifespan also highlights the need to design for people, to build a better understanding of how people interact with buildings and what makes buildings last. One of the most startling lessons learned from the Building Performance Evaluation program is that buildings break down when they are not meeting occupant needs through poor interface design. Perhaps there is now a case for changing this age-old green design hierarchy diagram on the left with one that takes into account the human factors at the very start of the design process and matches it with a UX design approach that's so prevalent in other design industries, but is somehow alien in construction. Having the right data structure and tracking the right metrics from the start is absolutely key to making the construction process and delivering sustainability in practice more accountable. And gathering feedback from occupants on how the design met their needs and expectations it could be seen as risky to start with, but in fact, it is actually this deep insight gained from feedback that adds the rigor to research that accelerates innovation. So these are recent projects featured in the book I just published recently with Hattie Hartman and Sophie Pelsmakers about energy people buildings making sustainable architecture work. And what seems to be unique about the projects shown here is that they all incorporate feedback gathered by architects from buildings in use, and that performance was designed in from the start. The majority of them had explicit contractual in-use performance targets, and all of them were monitored after completion. Again, the levels framework inherently facilitates this kind of comparison between expectations and outcomes. The most exasperating thing is how difficult it still is to find case studies with performance data and architectural merit. It seemed as if the two approaches lived in separate realms. Buildings would either be able to use minimal energy and have excellent embodied carbon metrics, or be beautifully designed. But using the levels framework, reporting framework, it will hopefully facilitate more of these types of contracts, leading to even longer lifespan of buildings. And in fact, as you see, the buildings are possible to find, but it is just challenging. It is challenging for architects to design with these metrics. And so the reason why we need levels is to make these metrics more explicit and easier to design with. To architects, it seems that the elephant in the room is architecture. A building's spatial and material configuration has a huge impact on whole life performance, and high quality architecture adds more value to a building than performative measures on their own ever will. Yet it's very hard to argue for architectural measures to be retained in the face of value engineering, even if they extend the lifespan, adaptability, and usability of buildings. So we hope that using levels and this emphasis on the lifespan of buildings will actually ultimately put a much greater emphasis on architectural quality. Meanwhile, to the wider sector, it's architectural education that's the elephant in the room, and many call for improved climate literacy in design. Perhaps the actual elephant in the room is feedback to introduce greater accountability for performance and enable high quality architecture that truly stands the test of time. So I was very lucky to have been able to work in architectural practice, policy, and research over the past decades. And I'm really pleased to have been able to set out this approach in this recently published book, where we describe what feedback is and how it leads to innovation in design through case studies that showcase both inspiring design and impressive performance. And levels is critical to deliver both. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith, for the presentation and also for the heads up to your new book. Thank you. Last but not least, we have Andrea Morro on the list of speakers. Andrea is works with the International Initiative for a Sustainable Built Environment in Italy. He is an architect and researcher as well as an educator, and he is responsible for the Protocollo Itaca, which is an Italian national certification system. I'm sorry for my accent, which is probably not right. We are running a bit late with time, so I kindly ask you, Andrea, to really stick to 10 minutes of your presentations. And I want to assure everyone that we will have a proper discussion after the presentations. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Your pronunciation was excellent. I will just spend 2 seconds to introduce myself. I'm representing a no-profit organization named ISBE, that stands for International Initiative for a Sustainable Built Environment. ISBE is a global organization. We have several chapters at national level, and I am the president of the Italian chapter, ISBE Italia. Our main mission is to facilitate the adoption of assessment tools by public authorities, and I will go to explain why assessment tools are such important for public authorities. We develop the assessment tools through European projects. We have concluded last year 6 EU projects, mainly in the Interreg field, defining assessment systems for the built environment at the different scales, ranging from the building up to territories. And we also manage a series of conferences at the world level and regional level in the called SBE, Sustainable Built Environment Series. There is one held in Prague every 3 years. That's very important. Our open source generic assessment systems have been used to generate several assessment systems in different countries, including, as you were mentioning, the national public Italian system that is called the Protocollo Itaca. And in the generic framework that is used as sort of metrics for generating the local systems, we have already integrated through the European projects levels, the levels criteria. So a step back to policies. As already said, we have several international, transnational policies and initiatives, both at global level, like the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainability Development Goals. And we have also European, very important policies like the European Green Deal that contain the circular economy approach or innovation wave and so on, and also the Paris Agreement. So all those policies call for national, regional, local policies and actions. So public authorities, and I'm talking about national governments, regions, municipalities, they need to set sustainability targets in different policy instruments like the strategies, action plans, regulation, green public procurement, laws, funding program, building codes. So there are many, many different ways to mainstream the goals that are set at global level into local actions. And they need to set targets in the policies, action plans that are measurable, reliable, and verifiable. And so the public authorities need indicators, they need assessment systems to set and verify the achievement of the sustainability targets set in their policies. I will do a very rapid example of what is happening in Italy in this sense. Since 2004, Italy has a national assessment system. I will not describe the system, we don't have the time. You just have to know that this system, like Briam, Lead, Degambe, other, provides a score to a building through an assessment. Several indicators are calculated, and several topics are addressed, like water, material, energy, indoor environmental quality, etc. And there will be a scoring scale at the end, a score assigned in a scoring scale ranging from -1 to 5, where 0 is the minimum acceptable performance and 5 is an excellent performance. And we have today more than 2,000 buildings already certified in the context of policies. Some example rapidly. Well, the examples are coming mainly from one region in Italy. It is the Piedmont region, located in the northwest part of Italy. We have a size maybe a little bit smaller than Slovakia. We are 4.5 million. But just to give an idea about the size of the territory where those policies took place. The first policy I want to mention was a funding program for social housing, 10,000 apartments by 2012, 700 million euro. And for the first time, the region decided to set a minimum acceptable score for concerning the sustainability of buildings to make the buildings eligible in the funding program. So all the social housing agency, all the public construction companies participating in this funding program, they have to prove to the region to reach the minimum performance score request in the program using the Protocollo Itaca system. And they were also allowed to receive an incentive, an extra funding of 10,000 euro per apartment. the use of Protocolo Ithaca has been very useful to fix and measurable targets in the funding program for the eligibility of buildings. Another example is a recent law, 2018, concerning the urban regeneration and the limitation of soil consumption. And there are incentives for the renovation of the building stock, the use of recycled materials, the improvement of land permeability. Also here, there is a minimum sustainability score request. And the incentive is not an extra funding. You can increase the volume of your original building by a certain percentage. Again, the assessment system has been useful to fix a measurable target in the policy. These applications of Protocolo Ithaca are not only addressing the public sector. There is a regional decree coming in 2013 that made mandatory the certification Protocolo Ithaca for the big shopping centers. So the ones with a surface bigger than 4,500 square meters. This certification is mandatory to receive the commercial authorization. With commercial authorization, I mean the authorization to open the shopping center. And the threshold was quite high because 3 points on Protocolo Ithaca means a best practice shopping center. And today we have 30 shopping centers certified, of course, belonging to the big brands like Decathlon, IKEA, and others. So in this way, it was possible for the regions to control the quality of shopping centers realized in the territory. And another very important application concerns structural funds for regional development, not only in Piemonte, also in the Calabria region. It is in the south Italy. In this case, the Protocolo Ithaca was used in the funding program for the renovation of public buildings for giving extra scores in the ranking list. So municipalities present the demand for funding for the renovation of public buildings like schools, offices, etc. And they have to provide several informations, including an estimation of the sustainability reached by the renovated building after the intervention, estimated with the Protocolo Ithaca. The score estimated will give additional scores in the ranking list because not all the interventions will be selected by the region. So more sustainable you are, more chances you have to be selected. And then the public authority, those are municipalities, they must certify with Protocolo Ithaca the building, and they must prove to the region to have reached the estimated score. And all this is coming in the green public procurement, because in the moment the public authority select a design team, select a construction company, those designer and company, they must reach the minimum performance declared during the presentation of the application. We have 300 buildings under certification with a huge impact because there was also a mandatory training for professionals to present the estimation of the sustainability score. So you can see how big could be the impact of such kind of applications. And finally, another example is the use of an assessment system in green public procurement. This is the case of a building in Torino, where the Protocolo Ithaca was used during the bidding process, during the tendering process, and the general contractor, the won the process, had the mandatory request to achieve the minimum performance score with Protocolo Ithaca, and there was a penalty of 5% of the value of the building if the score is not achieved. So we have a different governmental levels, ranging from global to EU to national to regional to municipal. We have different governmental levels. Each governmental levels is dealing with different policy instruments and actions. And we need to coordinate policies and actions for what it concerns the setup of targets. So it is necessary that a common core of indicators is shared, that we use the same metrics to fix targets and to report. Because, I mean, we have global targets, but actions are taken locally at municipal territorial level. But we need to report the result of local action to the global level to see how much we are progressing toward SDGs, toward the targets of the Green Deal. So it's really necessary to have a common set of indicators shared at all governmental levels. So to have a sort of a multi-level approach, governmental approach. Of course, when you will go from global to local, more indicators will added, and these are the different colored dots to increase the number of indicators to reflect the local priorities. Levels, as already showed before, is a powerful tool for creating an harmonization among the existing assessment tools or to make comparable the results concerning the key topics. And finally, why levels is such important for policies? Because, as already said, it established a common language concerning metrics, the indicators to be used to set up targets in policies for reporting. And it provides a common understanding about what are the most important sustainable building issues and topics. It supports the multi-level governance approach. It facilitates the international cooperation and best practice exchange. Also, not only at national level, but also at municipal, regional level, when you want to compare the results of your actions with another region in your area, you need to talk the same language when you want to exchange the performance reached and so on. And then it's possible to use levels to compare, aggregate, report the results from the local to the global level. And this is the last slide. It's also very important levels. You were mentioning, someone was mentioning before, the need to have a national assessment systems that can reflect the local priorities. But sometimes the private sector is not really positive, the market sector, towards national system, because maybe they have a more transnational view. Levels is a way to connect the national system to the transnational level, because a common set of indicators can be plugged in the local systems. And this could facilitate the uptake by the market, because at this point, a national system have two values. A local value, because connect to the local conditions using local standards and assign scores which regard to the local situation. But in the same time, having inside levels indicators, those levels indicators can be used for transnational comparison. Levels can also accelerate to fill gaps in particular situations where maybe you don't have an assessment system, you have to develop new one. Levels provides you indicators, metrics that have been tested and can accelerate also the adoptions of new approaches like circular economy and life cycle thinking. I conclude to make you an example. In this moment in Italy, we are revising the national regulation on green public procurement. It is the Ministry of Environment. And in this moment, I'm carrying out for the ministry an analysis concerning the alignment of the indicators used in this regulation with levels, because the Italian ministry want to be in line with the European indicators to be part of this movement. Okay, I hope to have been in 10 minutes. Maybe if there are questions,
thank you.
We can understand.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Andrea. That was very useful presentation, given also the fact that in Czech Republic and Slovakia, most of the renovation of public buildings and social housing construction happens with public money and specifically with European money. So it's good to see that these programs can be linked to some sustainability criteria and that levels can be helpful with that. So thank you. That were the presentations, and now we have time for a discussion. proper discussion. We will try to address all questions. I very much encourage everyone to raise their questions in the Q&A button. And let me start with asking one question. So I understand all the levels documentation and everything you need to use levels to assess and report your building is available at the Joint Research Center website. And I'm sure we will share the link to the audience after the webinar. So everything is now available. But do you need any kind of registration, or do you need any kind of certification of the architect to start using it? Or they can just take the manuals, read through them, and start using them? And that's one question. And the other side of the coin is what Jean-Pierre mentioned, that you definitely need some experience with using BREEAM or LEED or other kind of assessment system to use levels. So is there a plan to run some pan-European training, I don't know, initiative to bring the skills into the community of architects and civil engineers? I think that's a question mostly to Josefina, but everyone else feel free to respond.
Yes, thank you. So I've already forgotten your first question. The second question is
registration.
yeah, what do you need to know? Yeah. So first of all, of course, the materials, different documentations is available on the JRC website, which we link to on the general levels website. I can of course put that in the chat, or you can perhaps share it in an email afterwards, so that, or people simply Google levels European Commission and they would find it. But I'm very happy to provide that later on. Yes, I think that of course Jean-Pierre is right when he says that it is easier to pick this up if you have been working with different kinds of certification schemes before. However, we have really made an effort to try to make it possible for most kinds of projects to pick this up. I'm not saying that I would expect them to do all the indicators and all the 3 levels and just dive into it and it's super easy and done. But it has really been set up with the view to help, if I can call them mainstream projects, it sounds a bit odd perhaps, but most kinds of projects to start to reflect on those things. And that's why we have a set of indicators where you choose which one you want to focus on first, just as Jean-Pierre said. And we also have set up these 3 different levels of working with the indicators. So I remind you of that at the first level, it is you use the indicators in a qualitative manner at the very beginning of the project. And in many cases, we are providing like checklists, really. But also levels explains very well who needs to be involved when, who needs to be discussing with whom in order to make this work. So it doesn't just give you a set of indicators and say, well, now deal with it. It really explains how you would need to work together to make this happen. And it makes references to where you can find more information that you would probably need in order to work with different indicators. In some cases, it also provides some very basic calculation programs, such as for the water, for example. And yes, we are indeed preparing, as I said in my presentation, this year we are preparing web-based material support, so both to use levels once you decided that you want to work with it in your project, but also to train to do it. I'm also aware of what Jean-Pierre was mentioning in this life levels project, which is run by many different or a large number of green building councils, that they are planning to set up a different kind of training as well to work with a specific set of levels indicators that they find the most important ones, perhaps. And I'm sure that there will be other sector-driven initiatives as well in this regard.
Okay, thank you, Josefina. Anyone else on that topic of skills and trainings and?
Very shortly, we are actually involved in an Horizon 2020 project called the Train for Sustainability. And we are not developing training materials, but we are collaborating with scheme owners like the Gambé, HQE, etc., to understand what kind of competences each qualification scheme provides to professionals. This is described in terms of knowledge and skills and so on. And now we are proceeding to analyze what kind of competences are needed to apply levels and then to match. So to understand if you are a Degenberg consultant or if you are in the referent HQA, how much you are able to apply levels, if there are gaps, in the way to define a sort of a European competence quality standard in this field. So we'll relate to the European project that Josefina was mentioning, because the preparation, the capacity of professionals to apply levels is fundamental for the success of this system.
Okay.
Can I add one more point that may actually answer the third question as well on the Q&A board at the same time, hopefully?
We'll come to that. So we'll come to that, okay? To that third
It
question.
relates to training, though.
So, okay, then, so go ahead. I'm
no,
sorry.
don't worry. Don't worry.
Okay, then the second question that we received is also related to the very basic information that Josefina shared with us at the beginning, and that was that levels is an assessment and reporting tool and not a certification tool. And the question is exactly that. Why not a certification tool? Where Martin is asking if it would not be more efficient to have one common and harmonized certification tool rather than have a number of market-based tools. So why did you take the decision not to make it into a certification tool?
Well, that was never actually the intention. We wanted to be able to impact certification. We wanted to impact, public procurement, building policy, different kinds of sector initiatives, etc., and support them in their different kinds of works towards life cycle and more holistic approach to sustainability. So in that sense, we wanted to provide a common language, and we worked closely with many of the different certification schemes as well, for that matter. But we didn't see it as necessarily the Commission's role to set up a certification scheme. That is an ongoing work, which you need to, it's a business in a sense, and the Commission doesn't do that. But we wanted to provide a good basis and a good understanding that can be used in different kinds of, initiatives. So for us, it wouldn't be enough to impact certification. We want to impact certification, but that's not enough, because we want to have an impact on much more buildings than will be certified in the foreseeable future. So it's a different kind of task that we set ourselves, but working closely with certification schemes as well.
Okay, thank you. And another question that came from Carl Simpson is, how is levels flexible to apply to different construction procurement contracts? So typically there is a distinction between the traditional fully designed projects where the procurement is about the general contractor, and the second option is the design and build approach. And I let Judith take the floor because she had something to say to this before. So please, Judith.
It's okay, thank you. So when you're targeting a performance, so what's really effective about levels is it offers a holistic reporting framework. And the difference between certification schemes and levels is that certification schemes, if they were targeting operational performance, they would have to certify that. That would mean they would have to have benchmarks, and the certification process would be an entirely different process. Levels is a reporting framework, and there is quite a lot of evidence showing that just by requiring your project to report on performative aspects of projects from design all the way to operation in a harmonized way using real data and that's based in evidence of what's being delivered on site, increases the quality of the project and makes them more productive in delivery. So it actually creates a value for the investors and for the end users, which is extremely important. But it's a different thing from certification, which does rely on benchmarking. So it's actually quite hard at this point to require projects to report on operational, to benchmark operational performance, so to effectively add how well that project has performed for many of these performative aspects. But reporting, and so reporting is the most essential aspect, so that we can increase the amount of data available in the public domain, so that we can get closer to being able to say what is good performance and what is less good performance, what's achievable, what are the difficulties. And in terms of the actual contract, so you can easily put into the contractor's preliminaries the requirement to report on these specific metrics, and levels gives you a very robust data framework that that you can incorporate in the contractor's prelims, regardless of the type of contract that you use, whether it's design and build or otherwise. That if the contractor is required to deliver on, suddenly it aligns the supply chain interests towards delivering those goals. And one of the buildings that I showed in my presentation showed exactly how that can support, or actually the case studies that I showed in my presentation all show what a difference that those kinds of performative metrics and the requirement for contractors to deliver them can make to the architectural quality of buildings too. Hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else on this topic of procurement?
I'm not an expert in the different kinds of contracts being set up, but in the work that we're doing on green public procurement, which is where Levels is supporting this, there are, I know that my technical colleagues at the JRC, they are clearly going through the different kinds of contracts that can be set up and how Levels can be used in that context. But I think the overall thing is, of course, that Levels is also encouraging communication between different kinds of building professionals at different stages of the life cycle. So in that sense, I would have thought, but any of the more experts in this can tell me if I'm wrong, I would have thought that if you are using a contract which is taking a longer picture, so to say, you have probably a better chance of capturing everything that you want, also including looking at, is there a gap between the design and the actual and so on. But it can be used in whatever contract you set up.
Okay.
If I may add something very quickly, I showed one example of use of an assessment system in a public tender, the one in Torino. It was very quickly, so no time to go in detail. But in that case, in the tendering process, it was a design and construction kind of a tendering process. So there was a schematic design, and then the selection was for the design team, the construction company for finalizing the process. And it was possible for participants to propose improvements with regard to the base design. And the use of indicators was very useful to select the best proposals, because it was possible to quantify the improvement using quantitative indicators. And then it was requested to the winning group to certify the building and to prove that that value of indicators was achieved by the building one time realized. So it means that the indicators and the assessment system was a tool to guarantee the public client to reach what they were expecting to reach, a building with a certain performance. So it's really, Levels can provide very useful indicators also to support this kind of tenders and to guarantee at the end, to help to guarantee to reach at the end the expected performance, linking the conceptual design, construction, and operational phase. So it's a really powerful tool in this sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that answers the question. And Jean-Pierre, before you take the floor, I will also add one more question that that we have, and that is actually targeted to Knauf insulation and and to how we assess the sustainability of our products and how is this compatible with levels. And I add to that, if there is a difference between, assessing sustainability of our products for the purpose of using this assessment for levels or for other, BREEAMs, SB tools, and etc.
Okay, thanks for the question. So we are producing insulation materials. So the first objective of our products is to save energy. So we are really involved in this energy use indicator. So we are helping for that. So then if I'm talking about other aspects, so about life cycle assessment of the building, for example, what is very important is to get the life cycle assessment of the products, because as this is a whole life approach of the building, you need the life cycle assessment of every product you use into the buildings in order to get the complete picture. And so we work a lot, and I work personally a lot in order to get all the life cycle assessments, so what we call the environmental product declaration of our products that are available to the market for the architects and for all the people that are doing the building life cycle assessments, so the people that are helping the architects bureau offices. In terms also of indoor air quality, so we have also those aspects that have to be filling into the rating systems and all the other aspects. And we are working a lot in terms also of recycled content and recyclability of the products at the end of life. So we are really working on it to propose solutions also for the deconstruction and to think about the end of life of the building and how you can recycle afterward at the end of life the mineral wool. So we are really focusing on all those aspects. So at the products level, but taken into account that the products is linked to the building approach and what will be the end of the product after the use phase. So this is really an everyday focus, let's say. And then I just wanted to jump on some of the other questions that have been told before. So about the web-based material support, so all those indicators, descriptions, so all that is available on the Joint Research Center website. So when we did the project 2 years ago, so that was the first version of all the indicators, so the version 0. So everything has been now updated, and it's more simple. So it's simpler than before. So it's more user friendly. So you can be less afraid than when I was afraid about it 2 years ago when I discovered everything. So it's more user friendly. So just a remark, however, for the EU Commission and for Josefina, in all those indicators, very often we are referring to the norms, and that we can get better explanation into the norms and so on. So this is very nice because those are the EU norms. But something that you have to know, that norm is a cost. So if you need to purchase the norm, sometimes it's 200 euro just to get one norm. So this is also something that GRC and the EU Commission has to take into account. If you mention too often references to the norm and not enough description, then you lack also some information into the criteria, because not everybody is going to purchase the norm that is linked to the criteria. So just a general remark. And so then for the question about how we can use levels in the green purchasing, green procurement. So now everybody knows that the EU released a tremendous amount of funds for the post-COVID crisis. And all those funds are very often linked to sustainability criteria. So I really think that this is a very good opportunity now to use levels in order to get all those funds that are linked to sustainability criteria into the building. So it's really the perfect time for levels to come on the markets in 2021, when we will have all those funds that are available for the post-COVID crisis. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And that was going to be my point, that really this comes just in time for the huge funds that we will have to define how we want to use over the next 7 or 10 years. I think with that we will conclude this webinar. Maybe I will ask Simona to take the floor for a few concluding remarks.
Thank you, Peter. I think that we've heard a lot about levels, and it just made me think how we can either together, the Czech and Slovak Green Building Council, or individually, how we can promote it within our own respective countries, how to get involved perhaps in the mentioned training, and how to generally more spread it and support it. I think this is something that we should really sit down and think about, and it would be great to work with all the relevant people like Judith and Josefina, which I think their presentations were very accurate and were just so detailed that everybody is living with full knowledge of what levels is and to which purpose. So yeah, I think this is something that we should work together with you, Peter, and with Judith and Josefina as well. And thank you very much to all the speakers for all their efforts, and apologies for the little technical problems. I'm not sure, Peter, if you mentioned that all the presentations will be available after the event, and so is the whole event has been recorded, so it will be on both the Czech Green Building and Slovak Green Building Council's website available to anybody.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Simona. Okay.
Thank you very much, and speak soon.
Thank you. Yes, and I also want to thank all our speakers. Thank you, Josefina. Thank you, Judith, Jean-Pierre, and Andrea. Very, very insightful presentations and a very good discussion. I want to thank our audience for taking the time to be with us and take this first dive into levels here in Czech Republic and Slovakia. And I have full list of notes. And I'm sure that we will need and we already want to explore this topic much further and take it further in our countries. Thank you again. As Simona mentioned, the presentations and the recording will be available, and we will also include a link to the JRC website with all the information and manuals for the levels. Thank you again. Keep safe, and speak to you soon. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.